thank you guys again for letting us pop up here. We're going to explore some kind of trends from the marketing aspect in both commerce and culture. So again, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Kristen Lyons. I head up our enterprise partnerships team at Suzy, which is a consumer insights platform. And I'm joined today by Brigitte, Brady-Harris, and Andrew Tweed. Andrew has been saving everybody from their last-minute Valentine's Day crises. It's amazing that he's even here on the 15th of February. But we're excited to hear about kind of how he's led Shari's Berries, which was acquired by 1-800-Flowers. And then Brigitte has had the really interesting task of doing a brand IP takeover from Bed Bath & Beyond and kind of revamping the Overstock business. So I'll go ahead and let you guys get started and tell everybody about yourselves, and then we'll get into it.
Sounds great. Thanks, Kristen. It's great to be here. I love brand innovators, so thank you so much, Tonal, for hosting us today. My name is Brigitte Brady-Harris, and I am leading retention and loyalty for Bed Bath & Beyond, the new Bed Bath & Beyond, which is .com only. We relaunched from Overstock.com in August of last year, and it's been a real journey that I can definitely share today as part of our talk.
Andrew Tweed, can you all hear me okay? All right. Andrew Tweed, Shari's Berries, selling chocolate-covered strawberries, pretty simple to understand. Part of 1-800-Flowers, which owns 17 different gifting brands and makes about 3,000 employees or so. And Shari's Berries was a brand that was acquired at the end of 2019, had been sort of a humorous brand that was known for discounting, and so we just acquired the logo, customer file, and sort of rebuilt the whole thing. So now, a handful of years later, lots of learnings to hopefully share, and coming out of the Valentine's Day holiday, definitely learn stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, you've been busy, so thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, on the topic, I mean, we're here for wellness and things like that, so let's talk about this in the form of like a brand makeover, a brand transformation. We'll connect the dots here. Brigitte, your company has transitioned from a brand that was largely physical into online retail, and that's no small feat. It's a really big switch in terms of your capital structure and everything like that, and in terms of the way you're engaging with consumers. Can you unpack that for us? What has that been like, and what have been some of your biggest learnings?
Yeah, and the company that I joined in December of 22 was Overstock.com, and it was in business as one of the original e-commerce brands that started in 1997. So 27 years of e-commerce history on Overstock. Liquidation is where it started, and then it got to more full-price home goods toward the end of its transition in 2023. When we acquired Bed Bath & Beyond, which had gone, unfortunately, through a bankruptcy, a very beloved brand, 52 years old, omni-channel, and then taking it to pure play with our brand. So there was the interesting challenge of acquiring a customer list, so a customer file, and unpacking what that means for our business. It was also an interesting journey around bringing new merchandise to consumers, thinking about what merchandise doesn't go in that scenario, and then about to relaunch Overstock.
So exciting.
Overstock became Bed Bath & Beyond, and now Overstock is coming back as its own site coming up at the end of March. So, and we've got 3 other sites launching this year as well. So we will, I think about Andrew and his journey in 1-800-Flowers and that portfolio of brands, and definitely giving a lot of thought to that.
Yeah, so you were previously at Lyons-Sonoma, and you had done, I mean, you're not a stranger to the portfolio brand management. How is that different than, kind of other brand challenges, you think?
Yeah, no, I think that what's exciting about it is I can apply a lot of the learning from my time at Gap Inc., at Williams-Sonoma as well. So much, I also have a real appreciation for the people that came before me in those brands and what they had to set up in order for those ecosystems to function as well as they do today. But definitely 2 great templates for how to do it. I think the key for us, and the biggest thing that we're going through that I know you're going to touch on with me, is around data and what we do with it, and how to organize it and optimize it for that portfolio.
Yeah, you're inheriting a lot of different moving parts when it comes to the data and the assets from those clients, so that makes sense. And we'll come back to that. But Andrew, from your perspective, in that gifting space, in your space, would love to understand kind of how you guys have been thinking about emerging technologies like AI and things like that, or even just other types of content to drive your commerce platform.
Yeah, sure, and similar challenge that Shari's Berries have been around about 3 decades. So a lot of the gifting and audience that has been built up, you want to continue to foster that, but think about the next generation of customer. For us, in the direction that we charted about 3 years ago, was how do we move into a space where we can be a premium brand? And so that has a lot of different things attached to it, whether it's creating new product categories, which we've done, thinking about the digital experience focused on mobile. How do you reach consumers? So outside of search advertising, about 90% of what we do is video. That's fully performance-based. We try to scale into different ways that would reach more diverse, say millennial to Gen Z female demographic. So that's really what we've began to build towards a lot more. So an interesting challenge of making sure that you continue to foster the folks that love you and then chart a course in a new direction. And so a lot of the content and then some of the AI that's come into it has to do with pushing in that new direction.
Yeah, and I think when we were talking, the big question came up that Brigitte had was, how do you scale that? Like, that, like video content is not as scalable as other, parts of your toolkit sort of thing. How have you guys scaled that?
Yeah, it can be. It's unique to the flowers portfolio, so I wouldn't say it's a one-size-fits-all. Okay. And out of the 17 brands, we're in the top 5, so not the largest, not the smallest. But from my perspective, you want to chart from the beginning, where do you want to get to? And for us, we're trying to create meaningful connections between people, and often there's tiny moments where folks share chocolate-covered berries or other products that are meaningful, like sympathy gifts, birthdays, obviously Valentine's Day, Mother's Day. And there's different things you can draw from your audiences, but to be able to create a brand story that reaches a new demographic with video, you can't just jump to that and expect a positive contribution margin that's going to allow you to scale. So what we did, without going into too much depth, but it's like, how do you test a lot of things and create playbooks? It started with product videos of berries. Yep. It's very simple. Once we understood our demographic, it was a little bit more millennial women with children doing unboxings. That went really well. So we inched towards, all right, how do we have use cases that have a little bit more meaning behind them? We have local shops. We went and shot at shops of owners who actually make our berries. And then now as we move kind of in that next phase, it's like, how do you create something authentic, which is really important, that scales? And each of these are playbooks that every year we build upon it. So for Valentine's Day, we'll have 6 or 7 groupings of creative that have evolved that are sort of our baseline that support us moving into this direction. Mm-hmm. So it's really creating a stable ability to create content and then keep moving up the ladder versus jumping into, let's say, a brand spot. And predominantly we're scaled on Facebook and CTV, with some scale in TikTok, which is obviously a growing channel for everybody, but you have to be extra thoughtful there. Yep. And some YouTube. So that's the bulk of what we do. Very
cool. And legal's not here, so are you guys using AI? Every time I talk about AI, someone from legal stands up and says, "Don't talk about AI." So, what has been the experience for either of you? Have either of you started to kind of tinker, integrate? Are we still stuck in legal? How's that trending for you guys?
That's a really funny way to preface it. So let me.
We're not going to say anything now.
As
They're not here.
Publicly traded company, we had a really interesting legal discussion where there's so much gray area, obviously, with rights and copyright ownership. And so a lot of folks have started using ChatGPT and text when it comes to some of their channels, but when it comes to images and video creation, still not fully ironed out. Yeah. And I'd say on the other end of it, not just legally, but there's a lot of creatives who look at some of this and also say, well, I create work. Right. And this is potentially being fed into something. How do I feel about this? So we've had to really iron out with the team, first and foremost, how does this supplement what you're doing? Yeah. And what we've seen more recently is that a lot of the data analysis around what is actually going on with your customers. Mm-hmm. For us, it was a lot of card text messages from last February, enabling a creative who may or may not have a lot of data or technical skills. Yeah. They can conversationally parse out, all right, who are these folks sending messages? What does that look like? They identified one group that were centered around fathers who maybe are sending a combination of supportive and apology type of messages. used that to create a video of with an actress who we've used. She's kind of a content creator, and it was her being stood up at a restaurant, going home, finding a box of Shari's Berries and opening it, and the voiceover was based on one of these card messages, and then that audio, I think the spoken audio for AI has gotten really good, and there's still a little bit more of the rights that's ironed out there from a copyright perspective, so use that to generate the narrative. And so that went across connected TV in a lot of places for us for Valentine's Day, and did really well. And you kind of see where, resonated on NFL and Amazon and a few other places where maybe there's fathers who are clued in. So we're just starting to see that iteration, but being still thoughtful and careful around some of the copyright pieces, because I do think that's an issue that you should really consider.
Yeah.
And it'll get there, but I don't think we're waiting for a few of the large vendors to really figure it out before we just create content that flies out there.
Yeah, it's really tempting to have a bias to action and just put that in play, but you also want to be, again, thoughtful about all those inputs and everything else.
I think in the meantime, a lot of it has been getting the team comfortable with creating things. So on Fridays, we carve out 2 or 3 hours, and everybody gets in shared video, and we create, I think one of them was a children's story where each person goes around and adds to the story. And then we created the images for those things, and then someone actually created a book that they showed to their kids. And it ended up being very strange, but it was like the love story between a panda and a polar bear who escaped to space because their parents weren't a fan of their relationship. But then it all worked out.
That sounds like every story my child has ever told me.
But
it's all over the place.
Totally. But you see, as people kind of start to use and adopt these things, that was kind of the early iteration. But now, my job is to just remove some of the potential red tape or constraints on resources and let the folks who are naturally gifted and talented at creative see how it supplements things for them.
But that's great that you're fostering an environment to test and learn, because it's a skill.
Yeah.
It's learning how to query and prompt and do things that we're not used to, like passing off to other entities. So that's great.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Sorry, I'll keep it moving here. I just get sucked into the AI topic. We were talking a little bit about kind of the day-to-day and integrating technology, and obviously for you guys, you have been relaunching some of kind of the occasion-based stuff. Tell us a little bit more about your experience there across the portfolio that you're managing.
Yeah, being a 27-year-old e-commerce company that prided itself on tech innovation, we've gone through a pretty significant revolution in the last year of accepting different ways of doing things.
Yep.
So an example being that we're going to launch our Overstock site, relaunch it on the Shopify platform. So using the enterprise version of Shopify to power a new business, talking with Shopify about innovations and standing up e-commerce sites even faster. In addition to just using new external tools. So that's been a big piece of the journey of just sort of leaving behind some of our practices and some of our beliefs in this acquisition, in this new
cultural transformation.
Definite cultural transformation.
Yes, that's not
exactly.
easy.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
on that, then we can kind of shift towards more of the culture side of things. We've been talking about personalized marketing. We've been talking about how you're addressing that from a company perspective, and I think one of the questions you pose is you'd love to hear from other people on their tech stack and how they personalize. I'm curious kind of where you guys started, and then maybe we can dig in with Andrew a bit too.
Yeah. So you were talking earlier about how powerful personalization is in wellness, and it's powerful, we all know, as marketers across everything that we do. It's the nirvana. I feel like we've sat in this conference for the last 10 years talking about the nirvana of one-to-one marketing communication. And so it just is, after 10 years plus of talking about it, we just all realize just how hard it is to reach that. And I think one of the things that we are thinking about is enterprise suite technology versus building your own stack. What components, in the sea of opportunities fit best together. And right now we're literally redoing the entire thing. So it's been a great continued learning process overall to get to that one-to-one nirvana.
Andrew, how about you?
We've gone the opposite of nirvana. So having tried personalization and done a lot of things, and this could just be based on our experience, I think with all of the marketing platforms becoming so algorithmic and black box, what we've tried to do is set up a few layers. Like we want to think about whether it's network, devices, platform that you're marketing on, allowing ourselves to create content and repeatable playbooks, like I mentioned, that we send out there and allow the algorithm to figure out, how is this resonating with people? And we can look at engagement and different things and audience demographics and behavior, but what we've tried to do is not hone in on a lot of the segmented targeting, because more of the data fidelity issues have arisen, the targeting is more difficult. There's sort of a few different forces at play, so we're fully broad targeted on Facebook. We don't try to get too fancy on things, and it's scaled really well for us, and there's still a lot of takeaways. There's some businesses that are a lot larger with many more SKUs and have personalization considerations on life cycle marketing and those things, so it's not a panacea for saying that personalization doesn't matter, but a lot of it is how do we create rapid throughput of creative testing and then continue to iterate on that.
Okay. One other thing that you touched on, though, is the life stages, and we're known at Bed Bath & Beyond for our registry, for our college business. And so, again, trying to stand up these kinds of programs, again, in a digital format. What does that mean? How do we think about the consumer experience differently? And then the enablement of that has also been a big part of our latest journey.
Yeah, and that's something where you guys have also kind of started leaning into the content side of things as well, in terms of telling that story and making people kind of come to the platform in that way, correct?
Yeah, definitely enviable of Andrew's playbooks, because we are at the beginning of that journey as well in terms of content creation. But one thing that we're thinking about is long format, and the ability to create 2 to 3 20 to 30 minute level pieces of video content, then slicing it up for a variety of different endpoints. Okay. So that is the direction we're going in for this fall. So let us know how we do.
Everybody stay tuned.
Those of
yes.
you that are watching.
So obviously, like keeping the pulse of the consumer, et cetera, important to the creative, important to kind of the channel. How do you guys keep the pulse of your consumer? You obviously have a lot of data, but how do you look at those emerging trends? What do you guys, have your teams look at day in and day out to stay on top of those trends?
So we have a pretty good consolidated data stack where a lot of the transactional customer web marketing and then some demographic information sits. And so part of it is trying to understand what people are actually doing and where they're coming from. Say from the standpoint of our products and where does engagement happen, I think that the messages people leave each other are very fascinating, and then seeing what is out there in the wild. One thing that came up for us that we hadn't expected was that expecting mothers, there was a Facebook group where folks were just super hyped on Shari's berries, and they were just expecting moms, and they were having conversations with one another, and you go, whoa, this is interesting. And then we kind of looked at our messages, and there was a lot of self-motivation messages for self-consumption, like, I know your body's wrecked, this is really hard, but you're amazing, keep going, and people were sending themselves gifts. So I think, which is...
a page from BuzzFeed,
yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
Thank me.
Yeah. So I think there's that level, and then there's understanding the conversations that happen organically. For this Valentine's Day, we had one content creator whose video went viral, and she was just unboxing a flowers and berries duo, but the text simply read, for your significant other who might have not proposed yet. And there was so many messages like, I hope this ends up in his feed, and like, where did you get the... And the sad part was, I find it a little bit sad, might be biased, she made almost the same video that said, if you wanted to get something for him, and it was very not viral. So the reverse, do you want to give something for the guy in your life? Yeah, did it work? So I think that sort of, where's the mentality of gifting and Even that thought of someone proposing to be your Valentine's, like that connection that may have not even happened yet.
Yeah.
Or worrying that your significant other may not even have thought about a gift.
Yeah.
So that interaction was really fascinating. So these are things that are just going to happen somewhat organically as well that you have to keep a pulse on, and whether you want to authentically try to integrate yourself in that conversation or learn from it, it's a little bit of the judgment that you need to make depending on what's going on.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a culture of curiosity in terms of what you guys are looking at within the organization. Yeah. And Brigitte, you're dealing with kind of two different customer profiles, as you were saying, across the Overstock profile and the Bed Bath & Beyond profile.
Absolutely.
You know, how do you guys kind of keep pulse on where consumers' heads are at?
Yeah, well, there's obviously transaction, you know, and sales trends give us some direction for sure. And you talked about wellness at home. We're definitely seeing that in our home category. So the home moves a little more slowly than a lot of your other categories. So in a way, trend and reacting to trend it operates differently. But understanding that consumer. So what you were talking about earlier around who our consumers are, what we did, we partnered with Bain earlier this year to segment the home furnishings market and identified 5 different segments that we see across the landscape. And specifically for Bed Bath & Beyond, we identified a support seeker, someone who's looking for a little more guidance in what they're wanting their home to look like. Yeah. And that's been incredibly helpful in unlocking opportunities that we want to put forth in the future. And then for Overstock, it's a savvy shopper, someone who's, you know, the worst fear would be to have paid more than someone else, and loves the thrill of the hunt. Yeah. So it's been powerful to have the consumer insights and the research to really rely on to identify our North Star.
Yeah, well, those are 2 really different consumers, and again, you know, the content supports one, the pricing piece supports the other, so that's great. Just, I guess, last question before we open it up to the audience. Let's say we're sitting here next year. What advice do you guys have, or what advice do you guys have for your peers in, you know, the year ahead? Small ask.
Are folks mostly marketers here? Yeah? So, sorry about that. So for my own journey, kind of from being a marketer to taking on a GM role where you have a full-on responsibility around a business, one of the things that I think a lot of people have tried to grapple with is the fact that there's such a big drive to profitability now for companies. And trying to figure out, how do I talk about my marketing, justify my marketing, think about the scope of what I'm doing. There's a lot that you can do to get deeper in the business and understanding margins and contribution margins and how does the business side actually flow through. Yeah. So for us, we have 4 or 5 product categories. We have an understanding by SKU what that looks like. And if we were trying to push the envelope on creative concepting video, you know, for myself, it may not make sense to spend any marketing dollars. You know, we may pull back for some reason. So I think the more you can align your thinking with what is both the return on my ad spend, but then how does that actually trickle down, connecting the dots on that language with the folks internally, I think is really important, because in the absence of that, there's a lot of confusion around, well, what can I test? What can I do? Yeah. How do I create common ground when maybe the profit factor doesn't allow me as much space? Yeah. So that's not an easy thing to do, but I've found that to be very important.
A really good skill to develop in stepping outside just, you know, the marketing brain and getting to the broader business piece. Very cool.
I really love that.
Yeah.
For me, I'm thinking about the next evolution of social. I think we are at that point where we are moving toward something different. As I loved hearing a lot of the insights on Gen Z earlier today. I see the same types of trends in our business and in the research that we're looking at as well. So I don't have an answer for you in terms of what we're going to see in a year on that, but I'm curious and I'm excited actually about this next phase that we're moving into, from what we all consider, you know, sort of here to stay, influencing and social, and what it is more on a one-to-one basis probably.
Absolutely. It's a huge time of change. I think with that we have no time. We have no time. So thank you guys so much, and have a great rest of the afternoon.
Be around. Thank you.